Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he climbed the rocky trail in the Colorado mountains. The sun was setting and he needed to get back to his truck soon. His 8-year-old daughter Lucy was waiting at home with the babysitter, and he promised to be back by dinner time. He had come to these mountains many times since his wife died 2 years ago. The quiet helped him think, and the fresh air cleared his mind after long days at the construction site. Today had been especially hard. His boss had yelled at him for being late again and threatened to fire him if it happened once more. Jake knew he was struggling to balance everything. Getting Lucy ready for school while making breakfast and packing lunches took longer than he expected every morning. Then, after work, he had to pick her up from after-school care and help with homework and make dinner and do laundry. Some nights, he fell asleep in his chair while Lucy watched cartoons. The trail curved around a large boulder, and Jake heard something that made him stop walking. It sounded like crying, but not from any animal he knew. The sound was high-pitched and musical, almost like singing, but filled with pain and fear. Jake followed the sound down a steep slope covered with loose rocks and dead branches. He had to grab onto tree roots to keep from falling. The crying grew louder as he got closer to a small clearing between tall pine trees. What he saw made him freeze in shock. A child was sitting against a fallen log, but this was not a human child. The small figure had skin that looked like smooth crystal that reflected the sunset in rainbow colors. 4 thin arms wrapped around its knees, and its head was larger than a human child, with huge dark eyes that seemed to glow from within. The creature wore what looked like a torn silver jumpsuit, and Jake could see green liquid that might be blood seeping from cuts on its arms and legs. Near the child lay pieces of twisted metal and strange glowing panels that must have been some kind of vehicle or ship. Jake took a careful step forward, and the alien child looked up at him. The crying stopped, and those large dark eyes stared at him with terror. The child tried to crawl backward, but winced in pain from its injuries. Jake held up his hands to show he meant no harm. He had no idea what to do or say. This was clearly not from Earth, but it was hurt and scared, and looked so small and helpless that his fatherly instincts took over. He slowly knelt down about 10 feet away and spoke in the gentle voice he used when Lucy had nightmares. The words he chose were simple because he did not know if this being could understand English. The alien child tilted its head and listened. Jake pointed to himself and said his name several times. Then he pointed to the child and raised his eyebrows as if asking a question. The creature made soft sounds that were like musical notes, but Jake could not repeat them. Jake noticed the child was shivering, even though the evening was warm. He took off his jacket and held it out. The alien looked at the jacket for a long time before slowly reaching out with one of its 4 hands to touch the fabric. When Jake did not move or threaten it, the child took the jacket and wrapped it around its shoulders. This small act seemed to calm the alien somewhat. Jake pointed to the cuts and injuries, and then to his truck up on the trail. He made gestures to show he wanted to help clean the wounds. The child seemed to understand and nodded slowly. Getting the injured alien up the steep slope was difficult. The child was lighter than a human, but its 4 arms made it awkward to carry. Jake had to stop several times to rest, and each time the alien would look around nervously as if expecting something dangerous to appear. When they reached his truck, Jake opened the passenger door and helped the child climb in. The alien stared at everything with wide eyes and touched the seat fabric and dashboard with curiosity. Jake started the engine, and the child jumped at the sound, but did not try to run away. The drive home took 30 minutes, and Jake spent the whole time wondering what he was doing. He should probably call the police or the military or scientists, but something told him that would be a mistake. This child was hurt and afraid, and Jake could not imagine handing it over to people who might want to study it like a lab animal. By the time they reached his small house on the edge of town, the alien had fallen asleep against the window. Jake sat in his driveway for several minutes, trying to figure out how to explain this to Lucy and the babysitter. He decided to carry the child around to the back door so the neighbor would not see. The alien woke up when Jake lifted it from the truck but did not struggle. Its large eyes looked around at the house and yard with the same curiosity. It had shown in the truck. Jake managed to get inside through the kitchen door without the babysitter noticing. He could hear Lucy and the teenage girl watching television in the living room. He carried the alien upstairs to the guest bedroom and laid it gently on the bed. The child looked so small on the big bed, wrapped in his construction jacket. Jake brought warm water and clean towels from the bathroom and carefully cleaned the cuts and scrapes. The green liquid was definitely blood, and it stopped flowing when he pressed the towels against the wounds. The alien watched him work and made soft, musical sounds that might have been words of thanks. When Jake finished bandaging the injuries, he brought a glass of water and some crackers. The child sniffed the water carefully before taking small sips. It ignored the crackers. Jake heard footsteps on the stairs and knew Lucy was coming up to her room. He quickly stepped into the hallway and closed the guest room door behind him. Lucy looked at him with the sharp eyes that always seemed to see everything. She asked why his shirt was dirty and why he smelled like pine trees and something else she could not identify. Jake told her he had fallen on the hiking trail and needed to take a shower. Lucy studied his face for a moment, then shrugged and went into her room. After the babysitter left, Jake sat in his kitchen trying to process what had happened. He had an alien child sleeping in his guest room and no idea what to do next. The smart thing would be to call someone with authority and training, but every time he thought about those large, frightened eyes, he knew he could not do it. Jake checked on the child several times during the night. Each time he opened the door, those dark eyes were watching him, but the alien did not seem afraid anymore. By morning, Jake had made his decision. He would keep this child safe until he could figure out what was best for everyone involved. 3 weeks had passed since Jake found the alien child in the mountains. He had managed to keep the secret by telling people that Lucy was sick and needed to stay home from school. The truth was that both girls were in the house together, and Jake was trying to figure out how to handle the situation. The alien child had healed quickly from its injuries. Jake had named her Star because when she tried to say her real name, it sounded like musical notes that reminded him of twinkling stars. Star seemed to accept the name and would point to herself and repeat it in her strange musical voice. Lucy had been shocked when Jake first introduced them, but her 8-year-old mind accepted the situation faster than Jake expected. She was fascinated by Star and wanted to teach her everything about being human. Lucy showed Star how to use a fork and spoon, and how to brush teeth, and how to play simple games. Star was clearly very intelligent. She learned new words every day, and could already speak basic English phrases. Her forearms made some tasks difficult, but she was eager to learn. Jake noticed that she watched everything they did with intense focus as if studying them. The hardest part was keeping Star hidden when other people came to the house. Jake had to explain to his boss why he needed to work from home more often. He told everyone that Lucy had a long illness that was not contagious, but required constant care. Most people accepted this explanation and stayed away. Jake spent his evenings on the computer, trying to learn about aliens and space travel. He found websites where people claimed to have seen UFOs, and forums where they discussed government cover-ups. Most of it seemed crazy, but some posts mentioned beings with crystal skin and 4 arms that matched Star perfectly. According to these sources, Star belonged to a race called the Zalani Empire. They were described as highly advanced warriors who valued strength and military discipline above everything else. The posts claimed that Zalani children were trained from birth to be soldiers and that showing emotion or weakness was forbidden. This information worried Jake greatly. If Star came from such a harsh culture, then sending her back might be harmful to her well-being. He watched how she interacted with Lucy and saw a gentle, playful child who laughed at cartoons and enjoyed bedtime stories. The idea of this sweet being forced into military training made Jake angry. Star seemed to sense his concern. Her telepathic abilities were growing stronger each day, and sometimes Jake felt her emotions in his own mind. When he was sad about work, she would bring him drawings that Lucy had taught her to make. When he was tired, she would sit quietly nearby without demanding attention. The bond between Star and Lucy was remarkable to watch. They seemed to understand each other without words sometimes. Lucy would start to say something, and Star would finish the thought. When one girl was upset, the other would immediately offer comfort. Jake realized they were becoming real sisters in every way that mattered. Managing daily life with an alien child brought unexpected challenges. Star did not eat the same foods as humans, and Jake had to experiment to find things she could digest. She seemed to absorb nutrients from certain crystals and metals that Jake bought from geology supply companies. She also needed very little sleep compared to Lucy. Star was fascinated by human emotions and family relationships. She asked many questions about why Jake hugged Lucy when she was sad, and why they said they loved each other. These concepts seemed completely foreign to her, and Jake realized she had never experienced unconditional love before. Teaching Star about feelings became an important part of each day. Jake showed her how to recognize when someone was happy or angry or scared. Lucy helped by making exaggerated facial expressions that made Star laugh. Slowly, Star began to show more emotions herself, instead of the blank expression she had worn when Jake first found her. The telepathic connection between Star and Lucy grew stronger every week. Jake would find them sitting together with their eyes closed, and he could feel the mental energy flowing between them. When he asked what they were doing, Lucy said they were sharing memories and thoughts. Star was showing Lucy images of space and distant planets, while Lucy shared memories of birthday parties and holidays. This mental link worried Jake at first, but both girls seemed happy and healthy. In fact, Lucy was doing better in her studies than ever before. Star was helping her understand complex math and science concepts that were far beyond normal third-grade level. Jake wondered if the alien intelligence was somehow enhancing Lucy's abilities. Star also displayed remarkable problem-solving skills. When the old heater in the house broke down, she studied it for an hour, then showed Jake exactly which part needed to be replaced and how to fix it. She seemed to understand mechanical and electronic systems intuitively. Despite her advanced abilities, Star still needed the comfort and security that any child required. She had nightmares about being abandoned by her own people and would wake up crying in the musical language Jake could not understand. During these times, only Jake or Lucy could calm her down with gentle words and physical affection. Jake began to realize that Star had been emotionally neglected by her original family and culture. She craved the simple human expressions of love that Jake gave naturally to Lucy. When he read bedtime stories, Star would curl up next to them and listen with complete attention. When he praised her for learning something new, her crystal skin would glow brighter with what Jake recognized as happiness. The three of them developed daily routines that felt natural and right. Mornings started with breakfast together while Jake explained his work plans for the day. Afternoons involved lessons where Jake taught both girls reading and math while they taught him about their different perspectives on the world. Evenings meant family time with games or movies followed by bedtime stories. Jake realized that he was no longer just hiding an alien child, but raising a daughter. Star had become part of their family in every meaningful way. She called him Papa in her musical voice and referred to Lucy as her sister. The love between them was real and growing stronger each day. But Jake knew this peaceful time could not last forever. Star belonged to an advanced civilization that would eventually come looking for her. He spent sleepless nights wondering what would happen when they were found, and whether he would be able to protect both his daughters from whatever consequences might follow. The morning started like any other day in the Martinez household. Jake was making breakfast while Lucy and Star sat at the kitchen table, working on math problems. Star had been with them for 3 months now, and the routine felt completely normal. The alien child had grown taller, and her crystal skin was brighter than when Jake first found her injured in the mountains. Star was helping Lucy understand fractions, when she suddenly froze in the middle of explaining a problem. Her large, dark eyes went wide, and her forehands gripped the edge of the table. Jake noticed the change immediately, and asked what was wrong. Star looked toward the window with fear written across her face. She whispered that her people were coming, and that she could sense their ship approaching from space. Jake felt his heart sink as he realized their peaceful time together was about to end. Lucy grabbed Star's hand and declared that she would not let anyone take her sister away. Jake knelt down and hugged both girls while trying to think of what to do. He had always known this moment might come, but he was not prepared for how much it would hurt. 20 minutes later, they heard the sound of aircraft overhead. Jake looked out the window and saw 3 sleek silver vehicles landing in his backyard. They made no sound and moved in ways that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Armed figures in metallic armor began emerging from the ships. Star was shaking with terror and speaking rapidly in her musical language. Jake could not understand the words, but he felt her panic through their emotional connection. Lucy stood protectively in front of Star and told Jake that she would fight anyone who tried to hurt her sister. A loud voice from outside demanded that the humans exit the dwelling immediately and surrender the stolen Zilani property. Jake realized they were referring to Star as property rather than a person, and this made him angry. He told the girls to stay behind him and walked to the front door. Standing on his porch was a tall alien figure in elaborate armor, covered with symbols and decorations. This must be a high-ranking officer, based on the respectful way the other soldiers stood around him. The being had the same crystal skin as Star, but his was darker and seemed harder. His face showed no emotion whatsoever. The commander introduced himself as Veltar of the Zilani Empire, and stated that he was there to retrieve their missing scout. Jake replied that Star was not missing but was safe and happy with her new family. Veltar seemed confused by the word family and asked for clarification. Jake tried to explain that Star was now his daughter and Lucy's sister, but Veltar dismissed this as impossible. He stated that Zilani offspring belonged to the Empire and were trained from birth for military service. Individual emotional attachments were considered weakness that interfered with proper development. When Veltar demanded immediate access to Star, Jake refused and stepped protectively in front of his door. The commander seemed shocked that a primitive human would dare defy Zilani's authority. He ordered his soldiers to remove Jake from the dwelling by force if necessary. At that moment, Star appeared beside Jake with Lucy right behind her. The young alien looked very different from when Jake first found her. She stood straight and confident, instead of cowering in fear. Her crystal skin glowed with internal light, and Jake could feel powerful energy radiating from her small form. Star spoke to Commander Veltar in their musical language, but Jake could sense the meaning through their emotional connection. She was telling the commander that she chose to stay with her human family and would not return to the Empire willingly. Veltar responded harshly, and Star flinched but did not back down. The commander turned to Jake and explained that Star was defective merchandise that had been abandoned during a reconnaissance mission because she displayed forbidden emotional responses. Her recovery by humans was an unfortunate complication, but the Empire would compensate Jake for any expenses incurred during her care. Jake felt rage building inside him as he realized these people had abandoned Star to die alone and injured. Now they wanted to take her back not out of love or concern, but because she was their property. He told Veltar that Star was not merchandise, but a child who deserved love and protection. Veltar ordered his soldiers to take Star by force. As they stepped forward, Star did something that shocked everyone present. She released a telepathic scream that hit the Zilani soldiers like a physical blow. Several of them staggered backward and dropped their weapons while holding their heads, in pain. But Star was not finished. She began broadcasting her memories of the past 3 months directly into the minds of every Zilani present. Jake watched in amazement as the soldiers experienced Star's perspective of bedtime stories and family dinners, and Lucy teaching her to play games. The images flowing from Star's mind showed Jake bandaging her wounds with gentle hands and reading to her when she had nightmares. They saw Lucy sharing her toys and defending Star against imaginary monsters. Most powerful of all were the memories of unconditional love and acceptance that Star had never experienced before. Commander Veltor stumbled backward as the emotional memories overwhelmed his trained mental defenses. Jake could see confusion and something that might have been pain crossing the alien face. The other soldiers were equally affected, and several were making sounds that could have been crying. When the telepathic broadcast ended, there was complete silence in the yard. Star had collapsed from the effort, and Jake caught her before she could fall. Lucy wrapped her arms around both of them and glared defiantly at the Zilani soldiers. Commander Veltar stared at the 3 of them for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was different somehow, less harsh and commanding. He said that what Star had shown them was impossible, according to everything that Zilani believed about strength and proper development. Jake looked directly at the commander and spoke with quiet conviction. He said that love was not weakness but the greatest strength any being could possess. Star had not been defective when they abandoned her, but was simply capable of emotions that made her more than just a soldier. Veltar seemed to struggle with this concept. He stated that the Empire required Star return for evaluation and possible reconditioning. Jake replied that he would not allow anyone to harm his daughter, and that Star had the right to choose her own future. Lucy stepped forward and declared that Star was her sister and commander of their family. She said this with such fierce determination that even the Zilani soldiers seemed impressed. Jake realized that Lucy was using their own military concepts to defend Star's right to stay. The confrontation was interrupted by the arrival of human military vehicles. Someone had reported the alien ships, and now armed soldiers were surrounding Jake's house. Commander Veltar looked around at the new threat and made a decision that surprised everyone. He ordered his soldiers to stand down and requested a meeting with both human and Zilani authorities to discuss the unprecedented situation. Jake knew that their quiet family life was over, but he also sensed that something important had changed in Commander Veltar's understanding of what strength really meant. The conference room at Peterson Air Force Base was filled with people Jake never imagined he would meet. Military generals sat across from alien commanders, while scientists took notes and diplomats tried to establish communication protocols. Jake felt completely out of place in his best shirt and tie, while everyone else wore uniforms or formal suits. Star sat between Jake and Lucy, holding both their hands tightly. She had been quiet since the telepathic incident at their house 3 days ago. Jake worried that using so much mental energy had hurt her somehow, but the human doctors could not find anything wrong with her unique physiology. Dr. Susan Blake was the lead scientist studying Star's case, and she had been kind and respectful during her examinations. She explained that the mental bond between Star and Lucy was unlike anything documented in human psychology. The 2 girls seemed to share thoughts and emotions in ways that enhanced both their capabilities. Commander Veltar attended the meetings with several other Zilani officers who had arrived from their main fleet. Jake noticed that Veltar behaved differently around his superiors. The confusion and doubt Jake had seen during their confrontation was hidden behind military formality, but still present in his eyes. The Zilani Empire insisted that Star was their property and demanded her immediate return. They offered advanced technology and trade agreements in exchange for human cooperation, but refused to consider Star's own wishes in the matter. To them, she was valuable equipment that had been temporarily misplaced. General Martinez, who shared Jake last name but was no relation, argued that Star had been abandoned by her people and found by human civilians who cared for her. Under Earth law, this gave Jake legitimate custody rights that should be respected in any diplomatic agreement. Star listened to the debates about her future with growing distress. Jake could feel her anxiety through their emotional connection, and knew she was terrified of being forced to return to the cold military culture of her birth. Lucy squeezed her sister's hand and whispered reassurances, but Jake could see tears forming in Star. Large dark eyes. Dr. Blake presented her research findings to both human and alien representatives. She had discovered that Star's telepathic abilities had grown exponentially during her time with the Martinez family. More importantly, her emotional development had unlocked mental capabilities that the Zilani had never seen before. The doctor showed brain scans and telepathic measurements that proved Star was now more advanced than adult Zilani in certain areas. She could solve complex mathematical problems by intuition and had demonstrated understanding of physics concepts that amazed the human scientists. When Dr. Blake suggested that emotional nurturing had enhanced rather than weakened Star development, the Zilani representatives became agitated. Their entire culture was based on the belief that emotions were obstacles to proper evolution and military effectiveness. Star suddenly stood up during one particularly heated exchange between the negotiators. She walked to the center of the room and spoke clearly in both English and her musical native language. Jake felt her determination and courage flowing through their mental connection. She told the assembled representatives that she would demonstrate the true extent of her abilities. Before anyone could stop her, Star placed her forehands on a complex engineering problem that had been projected on the conference room screen. The problem involved faster-than-light travel calculations that even Zilani scientists struggled with. In less than 5 minutes, Star had solved equations that normally took teams of experts weeks to complete. But more impressive than her mathematical skills was the way she approached the problem. Instead of pure logic, she used intuitive leaps and creative thinking that incorporated emotional understanding. The Zilani engineers were stunned when Star explained her solution. She had found elegant shortcuts by considering how the mathematical relationships felt, rather than just how they functioned. This approach was completely foreign to their training but clearly more effective. Commander Veltar asked Star where she had learned to think in such ways. Star replied that Jake had taught her to use her heart as well as her mind when solving problems. She said that Lucy had shown her how emotions could provide insights that pure logic missed. The young alien then did something that changed the entire tone of the negotiations. She walked over to Commander Veltar and placed one of her hands gently on his arm. Through their telepathic connection, she shared not just memories, but actual feelings from her time with the Martinez family. Jake watched as the hardened military commander experienced genuine love for the first time in his life. Veltar felt what it was like to be comforted during a nightmare and praised for small accomplishments. He experienced the security of knowing someone would protect him no matter what mistakes he made. When the connection ended, Veltar staggered and had to sit down. His fellow officers looked concerned, as tears began flowing down his crystal features. He spoke in a shaking voice about sensations he had no words to describe in his own language. Star addressed both groups of negotiators with calm authority that impressed everyone present. She said that she chose to stay with her human family, but wanted to serve as a bridge between their peoples. She proposed creating a cultural exchange program where both species could learn from each other. Lucy stood up beside her sister and declared that Star was not just family but also her commander in their shared mission to help others understand the power of love. She said this with such conviction that even the human generals seemed moved by her words. Dr. Blake supported Star's proposal by explaining how much both species could benefit from cooperation. Humans could learn advanced technology and scientific methods while Zilani could discover emotional intelligence and creative problem-solving techniques. The negotiations continued for several more days, but the tone had completely changed. Instead of arguing over custody rights, the discussions focused on how to implement Star's vision of peaceful cooperation. Jake found himself serving as an advisor on human, family structures, and child development. Commander Veltar became an unexpected ally in the process. He privately told Jake that experiencing love through Star memories had shown him what his own people were missing. He wanted to learn more about human, emotional connections, and how they could be incorporated into Zilani society. The final agreement established Star as the first official ambassador between Earth and the Zilani Empire. She would live with the Martinez family while traveling regularly to Zilani worlds to teach about emotional development. In return, selected Zilani children would come to Earth to learn about family bonds and creative thinking. Jake signed documents that made him the legal guardian of an interstellar diplomat, while Lucy was given the honorary title of Cultural Bridge Commander. The family that had started with a simple act of compassion had become the foundation for a new era of cooperation between two very different civilizations. As they prepared to leave the military base, Star thanked everyone for listening to her voice instead of just arguing about her fate. She said that she had learned from Jake that every being deserved the chance to choose their own path in life regardless of what others expected from them. 2 years had passed since the diplomatic meetings that changed everything for the Martinez family and both human and Zilani civilizations. Jake stood in the backyard of their new larger house, watching Star and Lucy play with a group of children. That would have seemed impossible just a few years earlier. 3 young Zilani with crystal skin in different colors ran around the yard with 5 human children. They were playing a game that combined Earth tag with Zilani mental coordination exercises. The laughter and happy sounds were the same, regardless of which planet the children came from. Star had grown taller, and her telepathic abilities continued to develop in amazing ways. She could now communicate with multiple minds simultaneously, while maintaining her own individual thoughts. More importantly, she had learned to help other Zilani children discover and express emotions that had been suppressed in their original training. Lucy wore the blue uniform of a cultural bridge commander and took her responsibilities very seriously. She had become skilled at teaching Zilani children about human customs and feelings, while learning about advanced mathematics and science from her alien friends. At 10 years old, she was already planning to study interspecies psychology in college. The backyard had been modified to accommodate both human and Zilani needs. Solar panels that looked like crystal formations provided energy, while a small laboratory allowed the children to conduct experiments together. Jake had learned to build technology that combined human engineering with Zilani energy systems. Jake's construction company had become the first human-Zilani joint venture and was now building facilities for the cultural exchange program on both Earth and several Zilani worlds. He never imagined that his simple skills with tools and building materials would become valuable for interstellar construction projects. Commander Veltar visited the Martinez home regularly and had become something like an uncle to both girls. The stern military officer had learned to smile and even laugh at Lucy jokes. He was leading a group of progressive Zilani who wanted to reform their entire educational system based on what they had observed in human families. The changes in Zilani society were remarkable and sometimes controversial. Traditional military leaders resisted the new emphasis on emotional development, but could not argue with the results. Zilani children who learned about feelings and family bonds showed dramatically enhanced mental abilities and creative problem-solving skills. Star had established the first interspecies academy in a building that Jake Company had constructed near their home. Human and Zilani children attended classes together where they learned both advanced science and emotional intelligence. The school had become a model that was being copied on other worlds. Teaching methods at the academy combined the best of both cultures. Zilani instructors provided advanced technical knowledge, while human teachers focused on creativity and emotional expression. Students learned to use both logical analysis and intuitive understanding when approaching problems. Jake often visited the academy to give talks about parenting and family relationships to groups of adult Zilani who were trying to understand these foreign concepts. He felt strange being considered an expert on anything, but his simple approach to raising children with love and patience had apparently revolutionized an entire civilization. The most rewarding part of the changes was watching individual Zilani discover emotions for the first time. Jake had seen adult aliens cry with joy when they first experienced unconditional love or laugh at something funny. These moments reminded him why all the diplomatic complications and media attention had been worthwhile. Star served as the primary ambassador between the species and traveled regularly to distant Zilani worlds to establish new exchange programs. She always returned home excited to share stories about the progress being made and the families that were learning to express love for each other. Lucy accompanied Star on some of these trips and had become quite skilled at helping nervous Zilani children adjust to emotional experiences. She had a natural talent for making anyone feel safe and accepted, regardless of how different they might appear. The mental bond between Star and Lucy had evolved into something that fascinated scientists from both species. They could share complex thoughts and emotions instantly across vast distances. When Star was traveling in space, Lucy could still feel her presence and communicate with her telepathically. Jake sometimes worried about the pressure and responsibility that had been placed on his daughters, but both girls seemed to thrive on their roles as cultural bridges. They had found a purpose that used their unique abilities to help others while strengthening their own bond as sisters. The evening routine in the Martinez household had expanded to include bedtime stories that incorporated both human fairy tales and Zilani legends. Jake would read to whatever children were staying with them that week, while Star and Lucy added telepathic images that brought the stories to life. These quiet family moments remained the most important part of their lives, despite all the diplomatic meetings and interstellar travel. Jake made sure that Star and Lucy never forgot they were children first and ambassadors second. They still had chores and homework and time to just play without any responsibilities. Dr. Blake continued to study the family and had published research papers that established new fields of interspecies psychology and telepathic development. She often said that Jake's simple act of compassion toward an injured alien child had provided more scientific insights than decades of theoretical research. The transformation of Zilani society was still ongoing and sometimes faced resistance from traditional elements who believed emotions made individuals weak. But the evidence was overwhelming that emotional intelligence enhanced rather than diminished mental capabilities and problem-solving abilities. Star had recently been asked to address the Zilani High Council about implementing emotional education throughout their empire. At 12 years old, she would become the youngest being ever to speak before their highest governing body. Lucy would accompany her as cultural bridge commander to provide support and human perspective. As Jake watched the children playing in his backyard, he reflected on how much their lives had changed since that evening when he found a crying alien child in the Colorado mountains. His decision to help rather than call authorities had led to a friendship between two species and a new understanding of what strength really meant. The sun was setting, and it was time to call everyone inside for dinner. Jake smiled as he listened to the mixture of human voices and Zilani musical tones discussing homework and weekend plans. This was his family now, expanded beyond anything he could have imagined, but still based on the same love and acceptance he had always tried to provide. Star ran over and hugged him with all four arms, while telling him about a new telepathic technique she had learned from one of the visiting Zilani children. Lucy joined the hug and added her own excited description of a science project they were planning together. Jake held both his daughters close and realized that saving one alien child had actually saved them all by teaching two civilizations that love was not weakness, but the greatest strength in the universe.